In this video, we're going to be focusing on a super practical skill, that of solving chess tactics. And this is something that new players to the game should really be spending a lot of time on to develop the pattern recognition that is necessary for seeing tactics when they play. And it seems like a pretty straightforward theme, but I feel like I have a couple of concepts that may help you really know what to look for when you're doing tactics. So let's get into the examples. The concepts I want you guys to focus on are speed and beauty. When we talk about tactics, you often hear checks, captures, and threats. And that is absolutely right. That's usually what will get you the winning tactic. But what unites all these elements is the speed factor, right? The reason we're looking for checks, captures, and threats is because we're trying to act quickly. The other point, which I think is maybe not addressed as much, is that chess tactics are the beautiful and paradoxical part of chess. You know, they involve this, the use of surprising moves with a sacrifice of material in order to ultimately come out ahead. So if you're kind of thinking you're going to solve the problem in a routine, mundane kind of way with regular moves, it's probably not going to be the tactic you're looking for. So by definition, there has to be some beauty that you're looking for. So make sure that's going to be a part of your solution. All right, our first problem is white to move and win. And by the way, we're working on a category of chess tactics called decoys, which basically involve pulling an opponent's piece into an unfavorable position where then you're going to exploit it. So the first thing I would look at here is maybe this capture, right? Queen takes queen, knight takes queen. Hey, do we have a checkmate on the back rank? Well, we actually don't, because there is a knight that guards that square. So this was a good try. It's both a check and a capture, super forcing, super fast, but you know, there's just no follow-up after the knight recaptures. So what else can we do? Well, I mean, you could take the knight trying to remove the guardian of the queen, but you know, that's not fast enough. That's not a check. And they're just going to take your queen and you will be down a queen. So we need to act faster. And we go back to looking at our checks. Let's look at this one. Here we go, just giving up a rook. Now, the knight is pinned, so he can't take. But if the king takes or moves here, there's a pin being created that would allow us to win the queen for free. And there we have our first solution, guys. So we decoyed the king into a pin, and then we exploited the pin by winning the queen for free. All right, let's try this one. This is actually going to be another rook sacrifice. White to move, and we barely have any checks. I mean, you can't even bring in the queen because of the knight. So let's take a look at this one. The benefit of it is it's very forcing. It completely fits the bill of there's a sacrifice, and it is not giving the opponent a lot of choices because you're basically skewering the queen. They got to take you. So why do we pull the king there? It could be that check, but then the king just moves away. So it's not. It's that check. And now the king is either forced into a fork or forced into a discovery, but in either situation, they're going to lose their queen to the knight coming to e7. All right, moving on. Now it gets more elaborate. What would I focus on in this position? I would focus on things that are being attacked. There are no checks here. Well, actually, there's one. But there's the attack on the rook, and there's the attack on the knight. And plus, we've got like some knights on the board that are really good at giving forks, right? So how can we do this? I mean, if we take the rook, they take us. It'd be awesome if we could get a fork there, but we got to see their bishop. So that doesn't work. And therefore, let's look at it the other way. What if we take the knight? They got to take us, and then we take the rook. So right now, we're up a piece. And the reason we're supposedly not able to play this is that they're going to take our queen, but then they walk into the fork. And we come out a piece ahead in the end game. So let's take a look again. How did we find this? We, first of all, are aware that knights are tricky pieces that are very good at landing forks. We have quite an active knight that is already reaching squares on the opponent's side of the board. And we have a few possible captures to look at. By the way, guys, here's one way we can answer this wrong. We can take the knight and then think that we've got the solution due to that fork. A lot of students answer it like that, but they forget that they've given up a rook for a knight, and they're basically only going to get a rook for a knight. So in the end, you get your material back, but you're not actually coming out ahead. So the problem is that the second move is just not forcing enough. You gotta get a whole rook right away and then put them into this fork. And then you're going to be up a piece. All right, so now this one. Okay, obviously the target is going to be the king. He looks very open. We don't really have any checks to him from the diagonal or from the 7th rank. So it could be like a move like that, or it could be a move like that. Let's take a look. Well, giving up the bishop is not as forcing just in general, because they can sort of move their king and, well, let's just say there's no like immediate checkmate even here, right? So you kind of feel that like, okay, if there's no immediate checkmate, maybe I'm on the wrong track. But what about this one? Let's bring in the big animal here. It's h6, and they can't really ignore her intrusion, because if they try not to take her, well, she's going to come out from that side, and that's going to be painful, right? Like, for example, that's a checkmate. So they got to take the queen, and that's a decoy of the king to a place where he doesn't have a whole lot of squares. And then you get the checkmate with the pawn, which is actually always a beautiful and aesthetic thing in chess, to finish the game off with a pawn checkmate, guys. I mean, yeah, if you're new to chess, you might still be kind of learning this part that like chess is actually a beautiful game. It's just really like there's an artistic element to it, guys. And we try to bring that out when we play. So even when you're starting with like a queen sacrifice, right? It's so unusual. It's like the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing normally. But chess tactics make it possible, right? So you can see how this combination of speed and beauty is really exemplified in an example like this. They cannot just ignore you. They cannot just, ghost you when you play queen h6, right? They got to answer that really fast when they're put in check like that. And then ending the game with a pawn checkmate is so satisfying. Okay. Now, this one is pretty hard. When you first see this one, it's like hard to even see what the pattern is. Actually, white is down a piece. The king seems fairly safe in the corner, though his shelter is kind of messed up. So let's just do the process. Checks, captures, and threats. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a point to give away the queen there. That's our only check. Taking the queen, they take, that's kind of over. So taking the knight, well, we'll just lose our queen. So the obvious moves like checks and captures, they don't seem to work. So we're moving on to threats. And we got to be open-minded, guys, to any threat. I mean, especially when you know there is a chess tactic there, like anything that could remotely attack something, try it. And this move is really surprising because you're putting your rook where like a queen and a pawn can take it. But something opens up no matter how they take it. And by the way, if they take your queen, that's a pretty nice back rank checkmate. They only have a couple of useless blocks here on the back rank that don't change anything. But if they take with the queen, check and checkmate. And if they take with the pawn, well, I suppose you could take their queen as one of the ways to checkmate. And you come in with the rook, for the checkmate. So it's very helpful to have a far advanced pawn like that, guys, keeping your opponent's king unable to leave the edge of the board. And by the way, that's obviously an important element if we talk about pattern recognition. When the opponent's king is trapped on the back of the board, doesn't have that exit, that often is a sign that something could be possible on the back rank. So that's why advanced pawns like that take up space in your opponent's position are quite dangerous. Okay, this one is not too hard, guys. We've got one check, so let's make it. I mean, if they take us, we just decoy them into a discovered check, and we are going to just take that pawn. Check. Queen is under attack. We win the queen. Now, they might not want to take us, but they're either going to be checkmated by our bishops, or this is kind of a cute one, by the knight. Smothered mate. The king is completely blocked in by his own pieces, and because of the pin, they cannot take us. So pretty effective bishop check. Now we're going to go to some tactics involving knights. First of all, here I would say, we need to pay attention to active pieces when we are looking at chess positions. So we have a really beautiful knight on an outpost, securely protected by the pawn. It's a really nice relationship. We have a rook on an open file, and I don't know, perhaps the queen on the side of the board can be useful. I mean, she's sort of looking at the rook. So how do we make this work? You see, guys, it's going to be these three pieces that are involved in the attack because these are the active ones, right? These pieces, you sort of know, are not going to be very helpful. They're just not in those kinds of positions. So let's say we take the rook and they take. Well, it would be really nice to make a fork there on the king and queen, but it doesn't seem like we can. Giving up the queen would only make sense if we could get a fork there, but we can't. So it looks like that's not the right track. Any other way to do it? Sure, let's sacrifice the queen and see what happens. We're getting a rook for it. And then we are trying to draw them into that fork where we're going to wind up a rook ahead. So that's the decoy move. Now they can actually kind of go back here, but then they're losing too much material. They already lost two rooks and a knight for the queen, plus they're like in a super nasty pin. So they're probably going to lose the knight too. And yeah, white is just overwhelmingly ahead in material. But if they take us, we get the desired fork, and we're going to be up a rook. So I guess that's another element, guys, to solving tactics is open-mindedness, right? To the fact that you have to look at that move even if you normally don't want to give up queens for rooks, right? And so what makes it possible is the presence of a very strong piece in the center of the board, giving you access to very attractive squares like e7. And our final example, let's see. Oh, I recognize a familiar element. There is a really powerful knight, and it's on the opponent's side of the board, and there's the potential for forks. So how about this one? Does that just win the queen using the pin? Nope, because there's a bishop that's going to take us back. So that didn't work. Can we just go to e7? No, they're going to take us with the knight. So how can we do it? Take like that. They take with the rook. We try a fork. They take us. We can get the rook, but it's going to be not us ahead in material. So let's look at that. And I mean, we sort of did a tactical operation, guys, but we didn't really come out ahead, right? Where white's not ahead here, white's a little bit behind. So the right way to do it is to start out by sacking the queen. They got to take us. Yeah, I think I also forgot to mention that if you take the knight, there's like a checkmate here because our move is really not that fast. And it's like, oops, they can take advantage of that. We got to pay attention to our own king as well. And that's going to be checkmate. So we got to act like this. And then they take. Now, hey, should we do the fork and then win their queen? Well, no, because they're taking too many of our pieces along the way. They're taking our knight, and then they're going to take our rook back, and we're going to be behind again. So we take the knight, decoy them into the diagonal where the bishop is, and after the queen takes, we get the fork, and we win the queen. We're up a piece, and if they don't take us, remember, they got to protect their back rank because their king has nowhere to flee. But we're like, no, 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 no. We really do want you on that square. So come back. And you don't just request them to come back. You kind of make them do it. That's the beauty of decoys in chess, guys. So the queen has to take the rook, and then they're in the same situation where they find themselves forked and they lose the queen back. So I guess what I would say, guys, is when you are doing chess tactics, maybe actually the first baseline requirement is you need to have an open mind to moves that are kind of unusual, right? Because that's the implicit point, is that you have to be willing to give up something to get something more back. So being open-minded to all kinds of moves, and especially what kinds of moves we want to be open-minded to, are checks, captures, and threats, because we're looking for speed. We want to do things quickly, and we're looking for the beautiful element, right? We're trying to prove that the paradox of sacrificing something can work in chess, right? That like, it looks like it's a mistake, but ultimately you're going to prove your point and you're going to come out ahead.